It's time for the news.
The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has affirmed during the proceedings of the Russia-Africa Summit that Algeria aspires to a strong and mutually beneficial African-Russian partnership. Russia and Africa countries have pledged at the end of the Russia-Africa Summit held in St. Petersburg to promote a multipolar world order and increase economic cooperation. And the African Union has called for the immediate release of Niger President Mohamed Bazoum, detained by his guard members, and called for a restoration of the constitutional order in the country within 15 days. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail from Radio Algeria International. First, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has affirmed during the proceedings of the Russia-Africa Summit that Algeria aspired to a strong and mutually beneficial African-Russian partnership capable of allowing the emergence of a just world order, highlighting the important efforts of Algeria aimed at supporting development in Africa, in particular by curbing indebtedness and developing infrastructure in several countries of the continent. In a speech read on his behalf by Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdurrahman during a meeting which brought together heads of state and government chaired by the Russian President Vladimir Putin, President Tebboune underlined that Algeria, after having completed major reform projects, is now working to build a diversified and modern economy capable of confronting all challenges, particularly in terms of energy, food, and health security. He highlighted the good business climate conducive of national and foreign investments, which allowed to increase gross domestic product (GDP) to $225 billion and per capita income to more than $4,800, in addition to the no existence of any foreign debt. Let's listen to the Prime Minister.
After completing important reforms, Algeria is endeavoring to build a diversified and modern economy capable of confronting all the challenges, especially the energy, food, and health security. Algeria is currently witnessing, thanks to the program of the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, an inclusive development which made of it a promising investment destination in light of the new business climate which is conducive to local and foreign investments. This led to the increase of the GDP to $225 billion and the increase of the per capita income to over $4,800, while we aspire to record more than 5% growth rate by the end of 2023 with zero foreign debts.
The President of the Republic also underlined that Algeria relies in its development initiatives on cooperation relations with its foreign partners, including Russia, which he described as a strategic partner. In addition, he welcomed the various Algerian-Russian bilateral partnerships in the industrial, agricultural, scientific, and technical fields. President Tebboune added that his historic and successful state visit to Russia last month is the greatest proof of our common will to raise these strategic relations to their highest level.
My country relies in its development process on cooperation relations with its foreign partners, including Russia, which is a strategic partner for Algeria. This is reflected by Algeria's position as Russia's second biggest economic partner in the African continent and the various bilateral partnerships in the industry, agriculture, scientific and technical fields, in addition to consultation and the exchange of views at the Forum of Gas Exporting Countries and OPEC Plus on the means of stabilizing the global energy prices.
The Russia-Africa Summit was also an opportunity for Algeria to expound its approach for the resolution of all the crises besetting the African continent and highlighting the achievements made by the Algerian economy in light of the program initiated by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune.
This was an opportunity for Algeria to expound its approach for the resolution of all the crises besetting Africa, ranging from the development crisis, the insecurity crisis, and the debt crisis, all of which are interrelated. We also highlighted the components of the Algerian economy along with the results that have been achieved thanks to the program initiated by the President of the Republic and thanks to the economic dynamic Algeria is experiencing.
It's worth recalling that Algeria was represented at the summit by Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdulrahman representing the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune. Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdulrahman has met in St. Petersburg, Russia, with Mali's head of state and President of the Transition, Assimi Goïta. During his meeting, held on the sidelines of the participation of the Prime Minister representing the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, at the second Russia-Africa Summit, Ayman bin Abdulrahman conveyed to the Malian head of state President Tebboune's fraternal greetings, as well as his determination to continue efforts to strengthen bilateral relations, maintain peace, security and stability, and support development in the region. The talks provided an opportunity to discuss the state and prospects of bilateral relations in various fields, as well as the exchange of views on the regional situation and ways in which the two countries could work together to tackle the many challenges besetting the region. Russia and African countries have pledged at the end of the St. Petersburg summit to promote a multipolar world order and increase economic cooperation. The joint declaration adopted at the end of the summit, attended by representatives of 49 African countries, including 17 of the continent's heads of states, calls for the creation of a fairer, balanced, and sustainable multipolar world order, firmly opposing any form of international confrontation on the African continent. The declaration added that the African countries and Russia have agreed to increase cooperation in the fields of food supply, energy, and development aid. An African-Russia summit will now be held every 3 years, and a partnership and dialogue mechanism will be created for security issues, including the fight against terrorism, food security, and climate change. On the second day of the Russia-Africa Summit in St. Petersburg on Friday, Russian President Vladimir Putin underlined the solidarity between the two sides in their move towards a multipolar world, pointing out that promoting trade requires dealing in national currencies. This statement was made during a plenary session held in the presence of Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdulrahman in his capacity as a representative of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, at this summit. In his speech, President Putin assured that Russia was ready to work for the future and to establish a mutually beneficial strategic partnership. We are establishing relations with every African state within the framework of a multipolar world, added the Russian president, highlighting the importance of the African initiative aimed at resolving the crisis in Ukraine. Putin stressed that Africa is establishing itself as a new center of power. Its political and economic role has grown enormously, and all the parties must take this reality into consideration. President Putin also revealed that his country had proposed an initiative for cooperation between the Eurasian Economic Union and the African Continental Free Trade Area, reaffirming Russia's readiness to examine proposals on broadening Africa's representation within the UN, including within the framework of the UN Security Council reform policy. He felt that the Russia-Africa Summit was proof that the two sides were keen to consolidate their cooperation in a number of sectors, adding that Russian businessmen, investors, and companies were looking forward to new partnerships with their African counterparts. With regard to the crisis in Ukraine, Vladimir Putin underlined that the African Settlement Initiative is important because Africa is willing to solve international problems, and it is not a matter of mediation but the so-called free democratic world. Now the African Union has called for the immediate release of Niger President Mohamed Bazoum, detained by his guard members, and called for a restoration of the constitutional order in the country within 15 days. The African Union Peace and Security Council said it was deeply preoccupied and concerned by the worrying resurgence of coups in the continent and firmly condemned the events which recently took place in Niamey against the democratically elected president. In this connection, the African Union expressed its readiness to take all the necessary measures, including sanctions, against those responsible for the coup. Meanwhile, the UN Programme for Development said it would continue to supply aid to Niger despite the temporary suspension of the aid funneling via plane in the aftermath of the recent events. According to the UN, about 4.3 million people were in need of humanitarian aid in Niger that already hosts over 250,000 refugees from Mali, Nigeria, and Burkina Faso. Still in Africa, in Somalia, 100 members of terrorist Al-Shabaab group have been neutralized during a large-scale operation carried out by the army in the central part of the country. Military sources said the operation was jointly carried out with international partners in several villages and towns of the region of Galmund and Hirshabelle. It targeted a convoy of cars carrying members of the terrorist group. An anti-terrorist war has been waged by the Somalian government against the terrorist Al-Shabaab group, which has claimed responsibility for a series of bomb attacks perpetrated in the country. In Ukraine, the Russian Defense Ministry has affirmed having hit a command center of the Ukrainian army in Dnipro in the country's central eastern part, where 9 people have been injured after a building was targeted by a missile. It pointed out that the target was hit and the objective of the strike was met. According to the region's governor, 1 child was among the victims of the attack. The Ukrainian president, for his part, stated that the security services building in Dnipro was also hit by the Russian strikes. To the Middle East now, where the UN Under-Secretary General for the Middle East, Asia and the Pacific, Khaled Khayari, has expressed deep concern at the tremendous violence and destruction in the occupied Palestinian territories and called for concrete measures to be taken to secure a de-escalation. Addressing a public debate held at the UN Assistant Secretary General, he stressed that besides the continued deterioration of the security situation in the West Bank, unilateral measures were taken by the Israeli-occupied authorities that call into question the two-state solution. In this respect, the UN senior official indicated that over 20 Palestinians, including 5 children, were killed within 1 month by the Israeli soldiers, and over 240 were wounded during assaults launched notably by Jewish settlers on the West Bank. The UN Assistant Secretary General denounced as unacceptable the act of terror and acts targeting civilians, which he affirmed must be condemned and rejected by all. He reiterated that those behind the violence must be accounted for and punished for their actions, while stating that the children should never be targeted by violence, used, or ill-treated. Meanwhile, the Arab League warned against the repercussions of the assaults launched by Jewish settlers against the Al-Aqsa Mosque Esplanade. It condemned the repeated assaults on the religious site as a provocation against the Muslims and the whole world as a violation of the international law. And the United States has ordered its non-essential personnel in Haiti to leave the country on account of the insecurity caused by the gang-related violence. The U.S. State Department ordered the family members of its government workers as well as the U.S. nationals to leave the country as soon as possible. The U.S. has been advising its citizens not to go to Haiti on account of risks of abduction, criminality, and failing health infrastructure. With this, we come to the end of this news bulletin. Time now for a weekly program starting with my colleague Mohammed Barzwan, Sports Legends and Achievements. It will be followed by another program by my colleague Jamal Silmani. As for me, I'll meet you again tomorrow. Thank you.
Radio Algeria International presents Sports Legends and Achievements. Focus on famous world sports athletes who made history and now bask in the reflected glory. Hello there and welcome. Today we'll rivet the spotlight on renowned U.S. swimming champion Mark Spitz, who had lived up to enormous expectations during his much successful swimming career. Mark Spitz, considered the swiftest swimmer of all time, made his big splash during the 1972 Olympics, becoming the first athlete to win 7 gold medals in an Olympiad. His performances were even more remarkable, considering world records were set in all 7 events. Fulfilling all the pre-Olympic hype, he won 4 individual events in the 100 and 200 meter freestyle and 100 and 200 meter butterfly and 3 relay races. After his Munich triumph, Mark Spitz was bombarded with endorsement offers. He soon came to be known more as a good-looking, mustachioed pitchman than for his signature butterfly stroke. He made some $7 million in 2 years. Despite the efforts of his agent and public relations firm, his desired post-Olympics Hollywood career floundered as critics panned Spitz's performances on TV shows and commercials. It seemed he was criticized in his post-Olympic life as much as he was cheered. But controversy was nothing new. It surrounded Mark Spitz almost from the time he plugged his nose and jumped in a pool. Mark Spitz was born on February 10, 1950 in Modesto, California. When he was 2 years old, his family moved to Hawaii, where his father Arnold taught him to swim. After 4 years in Hawaii, the family returned to California, Sacramento this time. And at the WMCA, Mark Spitz received his first competitive instruction. At age 9, his dad Arnold took him to Arden Hills Swim Club to train under the celebrated Sherm Chavor, who would be a lifelong mentor to Mark Spitz. Arnold Spitz often told his son, "Swimming isn't everything, winning is." By age 10, Spitz held 17 national age group and one world record. He was named the world's best 10 and under swimmer. When he was 14, his father said, "It's now or never." The family moved to Santa Clara so Mark Spitz could train with George Haynes of the famed Santa Clara Swim Club. Mark Spitz continued to excel, especially in swimming's most beautiful stroke, the butterfly. At 16, he won the 100-meter butterfly at the National AAU Championships. The next year, 1967, he won 5 gold medals at the Pan American Games in Winnipeg. Mark Spitz was expected to win several individual gold medals at the 1968 Olympics, having already set 10 world records. The controversy came when Spitz himself, sounding brash and too assertive, predicted he would win 6 gold medals. He did not. In Mexico City, Spitz won 2 team golds in the 400 to 100 meter and 402 meter freestyle relays, and 2 individual medals, silver in the 100 meter butterfly and bronze in the 100 meter freestyle. What would have been a triumph to most was a disappointment to Mark Spitz. He rededicated himself to swimming and left to Indiana University to train with legendary coach Doc Councilman, who was also his coach in Mexico City. In 1971, he won the Sullivan Award as the country's top amateur athlete. Mark Spitz was named World Swimmer of the Year in 1969, 1971, and 1972. In 1972, after graduating from Indiana, he was prepared for the Olympics. His first race in Munich was the 200-meter butterfly. Even more exciting, though, was his next event, the 200-meter freestyle. Mark Spitz won in 1 minute 52.78, defeating his teammate Steve Genter. He shook off a medal stand incident at the Olympics and won his next event, the 100-meter butterfly, his favorite, by a full body length in 54.27 seconds. But controversy returned when Spitz was rumored to be pulling out of the 100 freestyle. He won a gold medal, finishing half stroke ahead of Hayden Reich in 51.22 seconds. Spitz's 3 team gold medals then came in. Despite some negative press, Spitz received a hero's welcome at home. He quit swimming, shelved plans for dental school, and sorted through his numerous endorsement offers. His agent said Mark Spitz was the greatest hero since Lindbergh. His showbiz career was not so storybook, however. Mark Spitz amused himself with his new hobby, sailing. He eventually began a successful real estate company in Beverly Hills. His next projected event was the 100-meter butterfly. Although his 1972 records had long been broken, he was encouraged because he had beaten then record holder Rowdy Gaines in a series of races in 1984. In 1991, Mark Spitz raced Olympians Tom Jager and Matt Biondi in separate 50-meter butterfly races on ABC's Wide World of Sports. Mark Spitz lost both. He also failed to qualify for the 1992 Olympics. His best time was 58.03. He needed 55.59. Mark Spitz still lives in Los Angeles with his wife and 2 sons. He enjoys sailing and traveling. Having given up his real estate business, he considers himself an entrepreneur and continues to do promotional work. And that's all for now. For me, Mohammed bin Rizwan, and the rest of the team, stay healthy and keep on reaching for the stars. Bye-bye for now.
في طريقي غريب مسافر حب يشوف زين الطبيعة والمنظر مدينة لمدينة داير.
Welcome to your weekly program, Destination Algeria. I'm Jamal Silmani. There are a number of great destinations in Algeria just waiting to be discovered. A curious mixture of cultures and influences. Algeria has something interesting to see in just about every city. The country is also the first largest on the African continent, so you can be sure that there are plenty of towns and cities to visit. Let's visit Algeria's fascinating destinations, you and I, together. There are a number of delightful little towns in Algeria that are well worth visiting. One of the lovely coastal towns you might want to know more about is that of Delis. The rich and fascinating history of Delis in Algeria can be traced back all the way to Roman times. In fact, it can still be seen in the form of a 2nd century Roman ruin that is found near the northern entrance of the old city. Many of the other Roman artifacts found in Delis were taken to other countries and displayed in museums many years ago. Even in Roman times, Delis quickly became a powerful and influential city. It is thought that this original city was destroyed by either an earthquake or an invasion. Either way, the city was then rebuilt by the Arabs who moved to the region for political reasons. During this time, it was called Tidlis. Many centuries later, it was taken over by the Turks and became a part of the Ottoman Empire. During this time, there were many different tribes and peoples living in Delis, and the city continues to prosper. According to Juan Battista Montalbano, an 18th century Italian philologist, Tidlis was a very prosperous port that was home to a number of rich families. He attributed this wealth mainly to the area's wool and flax dyeing resources. The city went on to become a popular holiday city, with many entertainment and sporting facilities being built. After many years of sovereign rule, Algeria finally took control of its own cities and towns, and so Delis finally became a truly Algerian city. Today, Delis in Algeria is filled with interesting ruins, relics and artifacts. Its diverse history has given it great appeal, while its striking coastal setting and colorful sunsets just cannot be ignored. The Ottoman-era Kasbah is a popular attraction, while the two colonial-era lighthouses continue to stand tall, indicating to ships where they should sail in order to safely make berth at the small port. Farming and finishing continue to be prominent activities here, and there is a distinctly industrious but relaxed feeling in the city. If you feel you'd like to see this town, you'll discover it to be a rich treasure trove of lovely sights.